Hi there, USBGF members, Phil Simborg, and today we have a very interesting and challenging problem that was selected by my guest commentator, Mary Hickey. And if you're not familiar with Mary, she just missed being a top 32 giant in the last voting by one spot. She's ranked 33 currently in the world in the giant voting, and well deserved. She's won 2 out of the last 4 U.S. Opens, and I have my own thoughts when I go to a tournament. My mantra is I want to eat, drink, and beat Mary. So here she is, Mary Hickey.
Very funny. And as far as being number 33 giant, I get more mileage out of that than being number 32. I tell people, if only I'd eaten more spinach, And but of course we all make mistakes, and this was a pretty big one that I made. I saw this 3-3. The score was 5 away, but I am going to present it as a money problem because it's the 5 away score isn't just like money, but in this case the answer is the same. So we'll just isolate it from the match score. Well, I saw this, and I saw that I could bring that spare down from the midpoint and then bring them both in, making my 4-point, and I didn't really look much further. And my game plan is to, well, of course, part of my game plan is to win with the cube, but I would like to try to isolate him back there in a 2-anchor game that eventually will just get too depressing for him to even consider taking, or that if he does take it, that I'm happy he did. And so I thought that this was part of that game plan, and, well, it is the second choice play. And so if I ask the question, what's not to like about it, well, what's not to like is that there's a better alternative that serves that game plan also, of isolating the 2-point where it is, and that's to get more checkers into action. And so what we all have to get over is that we have a problem sometimes, I think, letting the midpoint go when it clearly could still be useful to us. And here as a landing spot, well, I've got 2 back checkers, and so I should be thinking in terms of escaping them eventually. But the thing is, they're not in danger, and if I can win the game with the cube, or just get him so crushed back there on the 2-point that he can't get out even if he succeeds in attacking me, I'm not going to have to worry about frickin' frack back there. So that's not my priority, is to give them that safe landing spot. And so the right play becomes clear when we start thinking about what the real game plan is. Isolate that 2-anchor. And we're going to see in a minute that the right play is simply to bring all the midpoint checkers down, turning them into builders for the 5 and 4 points, and then complete the bar point.
Well, since you mentioned it, let's show the right play.
Sure, yes.
That didn't do what I wanted to do.
Control-Alt-N. Did you hit something else instead that was a control?
I did hit Control-Alt-N, but what it did is something different because I'm using WebEx, so I need to go back. I'm sure it shares a whiteboard in WebEx for some reason. So let me hit Control-Alt-F, and that shows something else. Having a little technical glitch here. We may have to do this again because this isn't working. Oh wait, I'll hit Return. Pardon me?
I could tell them something else while you sort this out. Is I certainly hope that none of you really worried about those back checkers right now. That any play where you touched a back checker is a blunder, and something's very bad going to happen if you did, and that is that Phil Simborg is going to invite you to play in his chouette.
Okay, now for some reason it didn't do it before, but it worked now, and we're showing the right play.
See, you're actually, it's the best you could do if you touched a back checker was a minus 0.165. Don't do that.
Okay, what Mary's referring to is if you had moved the back checker, your mistake compared to the best play is a minus 1.165.
It's sometimes referred to as a whopper with cheese. A whopper being minus 0.1, and then if it's got at least another 0.05 on it, that's cheese.
Okay, Mary, because of your level of play, you cut to the chase and you made the second best play. There are as many people out there that would have made other plays, like moving the back checker, like making the bar point and making the 5 point. which is another play that isn't totally ridiculous, because we've been conditioned, hey, if you can make the 5 point, make the 5 point. So that's a play I thought of when I first saw this. I also looked at coming up, making the point, and playing 6-3, which is even further down. But I've got a little saying about doubles, because there's so many more things you can do with doubles, and I think you illustrated this point beautifully over the board. My saying about doubles is when you have a roll of doubles, look for a great play and then find a better one, because almost always we have a knee-jerk reaction. There's something that jumps out at you. Hey, this looks darn good. And if you don't take the time to look around and see what other options there are, you might miss the best play. And Mary, over the board, I know that if you had taken more time and gone through the analysis, you would have made the right play. I know you're that good a player, and the only reason you didn't was you didn't take the time. You did a knee-jerk here.
Yeah, I saw that it did work with the game plan, and so we said, well, okay, let's just do it. And I didn't look around for something even better. It was a case where the good was the enemy of what was better or best, and that's often the case. I think that people are actually more likely to find a good play if the alternative is very unsatisfactory. They just say, come on, it's a double. A double anything. Shouldn't it play better than this? And sometimes the answer will be no, but if this second choice play had been unsatisfactory and hadn't advanced the game, I'd have kept looking. And, another thing to think about with doubles. Go ahead.
Now, I wanted to show, when you said you wanted to isolate these checkers, I wanted to look at the final move and show why this does. Having these builders on the 10 point gives you tremendous ability on your next roll or future rolls to make the 5 and or the 4 point, which makes it virtually impossible, or not impossible, but only leaves a joker double 2 or a joker double 3 for these checkers to be able to extricate themselves, and that's when these checkers are really destroyed. Whereas the other play that Mary made, it's going to be very, very hard to make this point or this point going forward. So you've got 2 openings for blue to come out and not too many ways to make those points, when in this case you've got 2 openings for blue to come up and many, many ways to make it because of these extra checkers being here.
Yes, it really does help that the moves that make the 4 point are all completely diverse compared to the ones making the 5 point. You're about 50-50 to get one of those points without having to lose anything else, without losing the bar point or the 8 point. And that was your problem, by the way, Phil, with making the 5 point. Here was you lost the 8 point. It was an upgrade. But why settle for an upgrade? What you really want is to have it all.
Wow, until you said it, it didn't hit me that it's anywhere near that 50-50. But if you assume that you're not going to break your bar point, and you use a builder from here, here, or here, you have 9 numbers. 3 times 3 is 9 if all doubles play. But assuming you're not going to break your 8 point, that means 7 numbers that can make this the 5 point, which means
because you only eliminated 1 double. The double 3.
I've eliminated the double 3. So you have 8, that's right. So you have 8 numbers that can make this point, and then you have the same ratio to make the 4 point. And 8 and 8 is 16, which is pretty close to half the roll.
Not sure. I don't think you have any missing doubles. Oh, yes, you do with the double 4. And so that's true, but then you put back the double 3 because you are willing to use the checkers from the 10 point to make 4.
Right, and you also have double 1s. Of course, double 1s is duplicated. That's right.
Yeah.
So you do. I didn't actually, just didn't hit me that you had that many rolls. So you're right. Almost half the time you're going to make this point at this point, assuming you don't get hit.
Right, and if you do get hit, chances are because his attack is so disjointed, you're going to have shots back at him, and so then you get an additional checker. Okay, so it's quite possible that I was, and many people were, one of the difficulties I had with this play, let's go back to the initial, is I was thinking, well, I got these 2 checkers back here, and I know when I'm trying to extricate checkers, it's important to keep my midpoint so that I have a landing place. But you don't need a midpoint if you're going to double them out after you've made another point here or isolated these checkers. So it's all about game plan.
Is your game plan really to race these checkers and hope to come home? Or is your game plan to play a priming game? And that's exactly what your game plan is with the correct play. You're playing a priming game on this side and hoping to win by priming as opposed to racing. And this is a more viable game plan, obviously, by 9%. Any other comments about this position, Mary?
I guess I would just add that it is fun to play with. That if you set it up at home and you then mess around with what does blue do after you do this with certain rolls, and then if you hit him, should he try for a second answer or bounce out if he can? And the answer is bounce out if he can, and because that's going to be a fantasy, and he does just try to get a back game here and jump out with practically anything. And one that I did set up just last night that was interesting, this was with another student, was supposing you do hit blue hits with a 6-2 and you hit back, and then he comes in with a 5-4. Well, you're able, and you roll a 5-1. You don't even think about hitting that checker that came out. You just make your 5 point anyway and let him hit you if he wants to, because you're still on that game plan. It's not about the checkers; it's about blocking those back men.
And this is what makes you, I think, a great teacher too, because very many high-level players, they can quickly see in their mind how the game plays out, but an intermediate or a lesser player would have problems visualizing what happens going forward. I mean, we can easily see that one play is 9% better than the other, but the reason it's 9% better than the other is just what Mary was saying. If you play the game out, and you need to play it out making one play and seeing what happens, and playing the other play and seeing what happens, and you have to do it more than once, because when you do it once, somebody might roll double sixes, and it ruins the whole analysis. You have to do it a few times to understand what's likely to happen. Well, great players can visualize it, but they can't all explain it. And I think you need to do both. So any time that you have a play like this where you have two completely different philosophies or approaches to how to try and win the game, and one is much better than the other, and you don't quite see why, the reason you probably can't see why is you can't visualize what's going to happen after you do each play. Now, I think after you see this play, and we explained the odds of making these points and visualizing how horrible it is for blue after one of these points is made, we can see how this plays out. But how many people can understand how this plays out? If you'd have made this play, why is this going to take so much longer to get to a point where you have a double, to get to a point where you have a really strong position where you're a winner with this play? And again, what Mary suggested is play it out, have some fun with it, see what happens, and you'll see that this position, all kinds of things can go wrong before you get to the point where you've won the game in this position, which is not true in this position. Mary, thank you very much for this position and the explanation, and I thank you for donating your time for these videos to the USBGF, and I know we're going to do more, so you'll see Mary from time to time, and keep your support for the USBGF so you can hear people like Mary talk about things like this. Thank you. I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you for your work with Phil with the USBGF also.
Oh, I'm doing what's really fun. That's why it's really enjoyable for me. And getting a chance to work with you is great too. Okay, we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.